Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I am going to be talking about pre-gens. Pre-generated characters in Dungeons & Dragons. Characters that are specifically not made by the player that will be playing them. Okay? So I'm talking about pre-gens today because I had a request from an excellent Dungeons & Dragons tabletop role-playing game commentator by the name of Doug Vahohic. And Doug is a writer over on nerdarchy.com. He writes a lot of articles. He's also currently playing in a Marvel Phase Rip tabletop role-playing game that you can see on nerdarchy.com. And he's playing in a great Open Legends game that you can also see on nerdarchy.com. He's really a very vibrant and robust member of the Nerdarchy community. He's really a great guy, and recently on Facebook he shot me a direct message and said, hey, what do you think about pre-gens? So this is my answer to that question. Alright, so here is the answer to pre-gens. I do not think that any Dungeon Master should ever run pre-gens in any game ever. Not under any circumstance. And the reason why is I know this sounds kind of light and fluffy, but I do agree that tabletop role-playing games, Dungeons & Dragons specifically, rests on a social contract. Now, what is that social contract? It is the game master saying something to the players, and each player saying something to the players, and so it's the Dungeon Master saying something to all the players, and it's the players saying something to all the other players and the Game Master. And here's what they both say to each other. The Game Master says, you guys are sitting around the Dungeon Master says, you guys are sitting around my table, and it is my responsibility to make sure that each one of you at the end of this campaign is an epic hero who has done memorable, awesome things, and that each of you as a player has had a tremendous time because I've been fair with you, because I've supplied a vibrant and a vivid world to play in, where you control that world and where your decisions matter, and where we're going to tell memories that will last a lifetime. Right? I'm going to set up a game where the stories we tell will be remembered by all of us as players for a lifetime. That's what a good Dungeon Master says to his players. He never literally says it. She never literally says it, but she says it with her game prep. She says it with the energy she brings to the game. She says it with consistency and all the things that a good Dungeon Master pours into her game. Okay? Now, what do the players say? The players say, I'm going to be respectful of the time you, as a Dungeon Master, have invested in this game, and I'm going to pay attention, and I'm going to be engaged, and I am going to make choices that make my hero that make my character an epic, memorable hero, and at the same time lifts up every player or character around me, right, and gives them an equal opportunity to shine. Okay. Now that is the social contract. Okay. So why am I saying that pre-gen should never, ever, ever, ever be used? Here's why. The part where it said the players say, I'm going to be engaged. Okay. Engagement starts at the very beginning of the game with race and class selection. A player must choose what race they're going to play and what class they're going to play. And honestly, running a pre-gen is a fundamental misunderstanding of dungeon mastering, of what excites players, and what is a Dungeons & Dragons game. It is my contention that any game that uses pre-gens is not actually a Dungeons & Dragons game. It is a board game, right? You have turned Dungeons & Dragons into a board game, and the reason why is you have taken away the most engaging part from the player, which is the player is going to say, This race excites me. This class excites me. This combination excites me. I have chosen from the beginning what I will play. And because I have had freedom and liberty in that choice, I am now engaged. Okay? And honestly, there's a lot in that, right? So let's say that somebody, that a player really can't decide. Well, that person shouldn't play. If you don't see a race and class combination that excites you, you really shouldn't be at the table, right? And that's my contention, right? And you are you're losing that opportunity to realize that person shouldn't be at the table. So when you are sitting down, that social contract is important. If there's a person who really can't be excited about any of the races or classes in that game, they shouldn't be in that game. And the reason why is there's no way they're going to uphold their end of the social contract. They're not going to make their character an epic hero. They're not going to lift up the other players around them. And then what you have is not what Gary Gygax built the game to be, right? So pre-gens should absolutely never be used. Now, I'm going to take on head-on the number one reason that people trot out when they talk about pre-gens. There's so many problems with pre-gens that I'm going to list them all, okay? So the biggest problem is lack of engagement. You're giving yourself a clue to realize that a player really shouldn't even be in the game, right? And two, you are also taking away the first and most critical moment of engagement, right? Now, here's the issue. Only somebody who fundamentally misunderstands what a game master, what a dungeon master's job is, will continue to use pre-gens. Now, there's going to be a moment of Scott Garibay kindness here. Doug has used pre-gens. Now, Doug, I know you're a good game master, a good dungeon master, and I think, and I have great sympathy for having used pre-gens in the past. And here's why. I have sympathy for people who have used pre-gens. And the reason why is the internet, through blogs and now videos, is absolutely filled with utter nonsense on how to run a Dungeons & Dragons game. Right? You've got to find the wisdom. And right now, there's just a ton of commentary out there, session zeros, coverage of source books, just ridiculous stuff like that nobody should be doing, right? And so here's the issue, all right? Here's the issue with pre-gens, all right? So you get a pass on using pre-gens in the past, but you need to stop using pre-gens, Doug. So here's the issue. What pre-gens really are is it is a communication by the Dungeon Master saying, I don't understand fundamentally what a Dungeon Master does. Right? And the first thing they do is they engage their players. And you do that through choice. You never, ever engage someone through restriction. Right? It just doesn't work that way. It's not how people like freedom and liberty. Right? And that's the issue. Is you're taking their freedom and their liberty away with a pre-gen. Okay? All right. So this goes so deep, right? So here's the other issue with pre-gens, right? Really, dungeon masters play the role of a deity in their world, right? They are choosing what the weather is like. They choose everything. How many non-player characters show up? What non-player characters show up? Dungeon masters control every single aspect of the game. Every single aspect of the game, except the player characters. And a dungeon master who knows what they're doing realizes that they must limit themselves. They absolutely must limit themselves to controlling every single thing in the world except the player character. The player character is untouchable by the game master. No dungeon master should ever touch a player character's sheet, right? Unless it's been handed to them by the player to review, right? And even then, like as a principle, the game master shouldn't even touch it. It should be laid on the table in front of the game master, and he should use his eyes, she should use her eyes to review it, and then ask for it to be flipped over, right? Player characters are untouchable. This goes so deep, right? That here's another thing that people don't understand, and I've switched this in my game. It's a mistake I used to make that I don't make anymore, right? Here's a good example. We're going to, you tell your players, hey, we're going to tell the story of a group of soldiers who are on the edge of a demon gate that is opened up in Faerun. And you're all grizzled soldiers, right? And, and then you have a player who says, oh, well, I want to play a Kender bard who's an entertainer. And they have a pink pseudo-dragon. You're like, man, that don't fit with my grizzled soldier thing. No, man, you got to pick something different. No, that Dungeon Master is wrong. You cannot restrict player character choices so that you can tell some precious little game, right? You choose worlds that have portals so that when I come and I say, okay, it's time to play Dungeons and Dragons, there is never a point where I say, hey, here's what you get to pick from. Dungeon Masters should never be telling players what to pick from. You know what the players get to pick from? Every single thing that Wizards of the Coast has ever published, including Unearthed Arcana. Everything, right? And that, to me, that's where you get an engaged player. You say, I have the whole world, and you have every single thing ever published by Wizards of the Coast to choose from. And you choose what excites you, and I will make a world where that fits. That is proper dungeon mastery. And it is pole vaulting over pregens. Okay? And so when you are seeing pregens used, you are really seeing a control issue from the person who is the dungeon master. They are saying, I am not happy with controlling every single thing in this world. My control must extend to the player's choices. And that is fundamentally wrong. Fundamentally wrong. Fundamentally wrong. So that's my take, is never, ever, ever use pregens. Let's talk about conventions, and the reason why we got to talk about conventions is I know it's going to be the first thing that pops up in the comments. Okay, now here's the issue, right? It's a one shot, right? So basically, what you do, now you're running Dungeons and Dragons, right? So so the game master's going to be like, oh, I need to make sure these are all balanced and all these characters are awesome, right? You need to make a character that can be made in 15 minutes, right? You got a 4-hour block, right? So you sit everybody down and you say, hey, okay, here's what you're going to get. You give up balance. You do not have a balanced character, okay? And you just, and the reason why is I will sacrifice everything. I will sacrifice balanced character builds. I will sacrifice cohesiveness of the group, right? Everything, so that the players have maximum choice, okay? So people will say, I have to bring pregens because generating a 5th edition character can take an hour, right? Now, you're not wrong. It can take a while, right? But here's the issue, right? What you should do is bring blank character sheets and tell them, okay, here's what we're doing, man. Everybody, you're going to generate your character right now. And how are you going to do that? Well, here's your stats, right? You have an 18, a 17, a 16, a 15, a 14, a 13, and a 12. You go right down the row. You put those wherever you want. And I already hear it. I already hear everybody out there going, what? Wait, what about the point build? Right? Forget the point build, right? This is a one-shot, man. Make these people awesome, right? And then you tell them, you pick your race, you pick your class, you get every benefit from it, right? And then you say, you choose armor. You choose, and here you go. Choose one magical armor of rare or less, one magical item of rare or less, and one shield of rare or less, okay? And frankly, right now, all you need to write on your sheet is race and class. And then as I'm about to amble on and give you all the jibbly-boo about the beginning, you can continue making your character while I'm talking, right? And the reason why, and you're like, wait, you know what? Wait, they're going to be building my character while I'm talking and telling them the beginning of the adventure? Yes. And the reason why is when they walk away from that table, they're going to tell stories about the half-orc barbarian charlatan that they chose and that they built, that had 3 magical items. and had stats from 18 all the way down to 12. You know what I mean? And it wasn't a balanced build, but it took 15 minutes, and it was awesome, and it was cool, and they chose it. They chose it. That is the key. That is the key. Pre-gens are horrible and should never be used under any circumstance. You should rewrite the rules of the game to make it so that you can make a 10-minute, 15-minute character. You can make a character in 10 or 15 minutes. You should sacrifice everything in your game to give players maximum freedom. So understand and understand that if you are tempted to create pre-gens, you are falling into a trap. And that trap is saying, I am not happy with controlling every single thing in this world but the player characters. My reach must extend even to the untouchable. Right? It is a corruption. Pre-gens are a corruption of power. An absolute corruption of power. Pre-gens should never, ever, ever be used. And if you are sitting at a table with pre-gens, know for a fact you are sitting with a lesser dungeon master. Thank you.